to have a top-tier candidate, and I'm not saying I'm a top-tier candidate because I'm a wonderful person. I am, but that's not why. But you know, I've been in the legislature. I've done this before. I have a record. I feel like if you're a 30-year-old for the first time running for anything, you have no idea what's involved in a competitive congressional election, and I just think that's going to be very difficult to translate against an incumbent who has $3 million in the bank already, will have infinity dollars, and frankly is an affable guy. I mean, people aren't going to fire Pat Meehan because he's a jerk. There are other people in Congress who might face that fate, but not. And Rick Santorum was sort of an example of that. But Meehan's not. This has to be about the country wanting to say that these are not the policies we bargained for. This is not the government we bargained for. We have to stop this. So I jumped into the race with that thinking in mind that I could, I'd be able to. I have a good network. I have a lot of experience, and I could raise the money, and I could hopefully motivate and inspire some people. I think what people are looking for this year is authenticity and passion and a vision that speaks to their lives, and I think I offer that. I think that even my harshest critics would say that I'm very authentic. Now, authentic's one of those words. It could be good or bad. It could be a euphemism. But in my case, it's probably a little of both. I take controversial positions. That's why I'm so much more well known than most of my colleagues. I take unpopular positions sometimes because I think that's what leadership is, where you say this is where we should be, and try to bring people along. And we've been successful in that, but that's sometimes it's tough. And so I'm hoping to inspire people to care about this election in this area. Final thing I will say, and I'll take any questions, is we're obviously not in the 7th district. Now the 7th district, I think, includes it includes 5 counties and parts of the Pacific Ocean. I think it's just you've seen what the 7th looked like. It's the most gerrymandered district in the country by several metrics, and you can drive through the district, drive out of the district, drive an hour and be back into the district. Okay, it's true. And if anyone hasn't seen it, please let me know before we leave. We'll show it to you, and it's just this is what gerrymandering looks like. But Narberth, Lower Merion is not. None of that is in the 7th district. So why should you care? I'm not running to represent you if you live in this township. And it's because it's all about the majority. I mean, the majority party in a legislature decides dictatorially what bills run, what bills don't run, when they go in committee, what they say, all of that. And if we're in the minority, we are powerless in the House of Representatives. The Senate has the filibuster. There's a few things. The House, you just vote no on stuff that's going to pass anyway. Okay, that's your job, okay, in Washington. So we need the majority back, and a vote of the 24 that we need is just as good in the 7th district as it is in the 2nd, which is where you live. The 2nd district will never be competitive under the current configuration. So you can't do anything to help stop the Trump agenda in Congress by voting. You can only do it by helping people in other seats that could win. And there are 2, there's actually 3. There's a 6th in the 7th district. The 7th is the top one. It's the one that Hillary won by the most in Pennsylvania that Trump holds. And then it's also theoretically possible to win the 8th district as well, Bucks County. There's just a minor glitch in that we don't actually have a candidate. But some people are working on that. But so anyway,
can't we fly one in?
We could, and may have to. I mean, I don't understand. There was a hotly contested primaries in years when we were never going to win that district. Now that we can win it, no one wants to run. I just don't get it. But we're again. Hopefully that'll sort itself out. But so I'm all in. We're working very hard, and I'm a workaholic. I work very hard. So I think we're prepared to run a very good race. We have a very good team, and I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
Can I ask you? You chose to go against Meehan. Is he, in your estimation, the most vulnerable? I mean, there's Costello. There's others that are.
Well, I live in the district, the 7th, so there's that. But beyond that, Meehan is in the district that Hillary won by the most, that the Republicans hold in Pennsylvania. So it is, I think, the seat that's most vulnerable as a seat. Now, Meehan is also more entrenched maybe than Costello, so there is some of that. I'm not sure how much that's going to matter, because at the end of the day, Republicans are never going to struggle for money. You know, I mean, Costello's been there, Meehan's been there 8 years, Costello's been there 4. It's not like a huge difference. You know, but I think the 7th, and I know this is self-serving, but I think the 7th is just objectively the best shot we have in Pennsylvania picking up a seat.
You talking about nationalizing the race. What about issues that are going to be of interest to people in the district? What would you think those are?
Issues that are not part of the national dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, instead of just running to stop Trump's agenda, they're local issues. There was local issues.
Well, I mean, let me first say running to stop Trump is part of it. It's not the only thing I want to do. I mean, there's a lot of affirmative things I want to do that I've been fighting for in Harrisburg with some success. Although it's, you know, I mean, I'm very proud of the important legislation we passed, which is tough in a situation where I've been in the minority. The Senate has been Republican since I got to Harrisburg. I was in the majority 2 years in the House, which was nice. But it's, you know, basically we've been fighting uphill and we've gotten a lot done. And some of the things that I've introduced we're still fighting for, and I want to fight for there. I talked about there's a number of crises we face as a country. And Trump is one of them, but I'm going to put it aside because you asked about the others. One is economic. We are in a situation that is not sustainable, I don't believe. We have the greatest wealth and income disparity in over 100 years. And it just gets worse every day. I mean, the minimum wage hasn't gone up in 11 years. It continues to atrophy. People on the minimum wage and even above it are living deep in poverty. Do you know what and I talked about this, I don't think it was at my event the other night, but I talked about this. Do you know what the tip, a tip minimum wage is? A minimum wage for people who theoretically get tips, like waiters and airport baggage people. $2.13 an hour is the federal minimum wage for people who get tips. And that has not gone up in a quarter of a century. And, you know, just as a parenthetical, this is something, and one of the ways I've been successful is you try to advance policies for perhaps liberal reasons or progressive reasons, but also, and given the environment, you got to find conservatives to join you. And how do you do that? You got to find a conservative angle on something like, and that's why we've seen, for example, very, very red states like Utah and Nebraska eliminate their death penalty. Why? Not because they feel bad for people on death row, but because it just costs too much. So I don't care why they're voting for it, as long as they vote for it. So like the minimum wage is a good example of that. Because what happens is people who can't make enough money to survive wind up using government programs. In fact, there was a famous story a couple of years ago where McDonald's on their website for their employees said, this is how you apply for food stamps. This is how you apply for home heating oil assistance. Now, why should a multi-billion-dollar corporation be able to outsource paying their workers to the government? Okay, we're not going to pay them enough to eat, to feed their families, but so here's food stamps. The taxpayers will pay. We'll just get the profits off with their work. That's wrong. McDonald's should have to pay their workers, and not us. And that's a conservative reason to support increasing the minimum wage, as opposed to the liberal sort of humanitarian reasons. We're one of 3 countries in the world that has no paid family leave at all, policy at all. We're the richest country. It is obscene. And the statistics on the outcomes in terms of newborns, in terms of people with illnesses who get to, spend some time are just through the roof. And it's wrong that we don't give people that option. I made a joke the other night about who likes going to a restaurant where the chef coughs in your taco bowl, and very few hands went up. And people should not have to choose between staying home and getting better if they're sick, or losing their job. And losing their job. So, if someone's sick, I want them to stay home. Not only for them, but for me. I don't want them spreading illness. When one of my staff is sick, I immediately get out of here, go away. We should have policies that do that. We should have, to me, health insurance is a human right. If you are sick and there is medicine or a procedure that will make you better, to me, I do not see any moral justification for denying people that simply because they're not wealthy enough. And so the only way, to me, to guarantee that human right is what most of the rest of the world has figured out already, which is a single-payer healthcare system. College education is something that we should. I think, a brilliant system for college education, and it's not just because I thought of it, although that helps certainly. But I would say, real quick, this is what it is. We set up a fund, right? Everyone who wants to go to state school can pull from that fund, and they can go to pay for their tuition, room, and board. They come out, and this is in the state, federal level, and I can support a free college option, but I think given the political environment, this is more realistic. But just let me. So they borrow from the fund, they borrow from the state. They go to college. They come out, they pay it back, but interest free. We're not using our kids as a profit center. Number one. Number two, as a percentage of their income, so they don't have to take a job they're not suited for because they're crushed with student debt. And so they can, and then as they make more, they pay more. And then finally, there's a tiny surcharge. So if you borrow $150,000, you pay back $150,000. Except it's like $153,000 because there's a small surcharge amortized over all the payments, so it's barely noticeable for insurance. So if you die, if you flee the country, if for some reason you can't pay back the loan, the insurance company, private insurance, pays back the loan. The state gets 100% reimbursed. Right now we have a 15% default rate on student loans. So this solves all of our problems. Students can go to college, they're not crushed with debt, the state gets all their money back, 100%. And so it seems like we can do a few simple things like that and make people's lives dramatically better, because we can't sustain a situation where people, where a few people are doing extremely well. The last 25 years, the top 1%, their income has gone up 300% on average. Whereas the bottom 60%, their income hasn't gone up at all. Now, that's just, over time, we just can't function as a society like that. So no one's talking about getting rid of the capitalist system or anything like that. We're just talking about a few things. We have a minimum wage. Just let's make it reasonable and then attach it to inflation so we don't have to have this argument every year. It just goes up or not based on inflation. So there's a few things we can do economically. We have a political crisis. I don't want to go on too long, but gerrymandering is and there's no better example of gerrymandering than this district. And we have a climate crisis, which is also causing an economic crisis. And there's a new report out today about how dire things are. And we're just not only ignoring it, we're aggressively running in the opposite direction. I mean, Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Agreement apparently in large part because the French president shook his hand too hard. Okay? This is the rationale. Yeah, he was pissed that Macron that had that handshake standoff, and he was on the fence about pulling out of Paris, and apparently he got back to that and he said, pulling out of Paris, that's it. And it's just crazy making, okay? And we have a Congress that does nothing, that says nothing, silent. It is infuriating. If a Democrat was doing anything like this, I would be screaming from the top of my lungs. I voted against Ed Rendell's last two budgets because I didn't think they were good budgets. You got to be willing. I understand political parties, and there's a place for them and the place for elections, and you fight in elections. But after election day, there should be at least a few months where you just you govern.
Yeah.
Okay? And we don't do that anymore. So anyway, I hope that was a long-winded enough answer for you. Yes?
Okay, so we're talking about volunteers here for not in your district, and we'll help you as much as we can. And I love your Facebook page. I actually said to you should be a stand-up comedian.
I was for one.
You were.
And improv.
Now let's talk money, besides whatever anybody can give here, because that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Are there any PACs that you know of that are willing to step up to the plate and give you money?
Well,
Money.
are you talking about regular PACs or super PACs? Super PACs we're not allowed to know of, and I don't know of any.
Okay.
There are individual PACs that can give $5,000 for the primary and $5,000 for a general. That's all a PAC can give, generally speaking. So like a labor union or the teachers, and I imagine that I'll have some of that.
Who was the man that gave all the money to the district attorney
Soros.
Yeah, but keep,
Source, I thought it was somebody else.